Commander Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of Earth Defense, Station Aegis Prime. A huge metal station floated in space between Earth and Mars. Jake had been watching the stars for 3 hours now, waiting for something to happen. He knew it would come soon. The communication panel started beeping. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez turned around in her seat. Her face looked worried. "Commander, we're getting a message from deep space. It's coming from the Galactic Council." Jake stood up and walked over to Amy's station. The Galactic Council was made up of 7 different alien races. They had been watching humans for the last 50 years. Most of the time, they left humans alone. But lately, things had been changing. "Put it on the main screen," Jake said. The big screen at the front of the bridge turned on. A tall, blue-skinned alien appeared. Jake recognized him right away. It was Admiral Vorthik from the Zephyrian Empire. The Zephyrians were the strongest military force in the galaxy. At least, that's what they thought. Vorthik's voice was deep and scary. "Attention, primitive humans. I am Admiral Vorthik of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. The Galactic Council has made a decision about your species." Jake felt his hands make fists. He had been expecting this day for a long time. Amy looked back at him with wide eyes. The other crew members on the bridge stopped what they were doing to listen. "Your species has spread to 12 star systems without permission," Vorthik continued. "You have built colonies and mining stations in space that belongs to the Galactic Council. This cannot continue." The alien's face came closer to the camera. His yellow eyes looked angry. "You have exactly 72 hours to remove all humans from these systems. If you do not obey, we will remove you ourselves. Your primitive weapons and slow ships cannot stop us." Jake wanted to laugh, but he kept his face serious. If only this alien knew the truth about human weapons and ships. But that was the whole point. The aliens were supposed to think humans were weak and stupid. "We have 847 warships ready to attack your colonies," Vorthik said. "Each one of our ships is bigger and stronger than your largest vessel. Our plasma cannons can destroy your metal hulls in seconds. Our quantum shields can stop any weapon you have." The message ended. The screen went black. The bridge was quiet. For a moment, Amy turned to Jake. "Commander, what do we do?" Jake smiled a little. "We follow the plan. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the aliens have taken the bait." While Amy sent the message, Jake thought about the last 50 years. When humans first met the aliens, they had made a smart choice. Instead of showing their real technology, they had pretended to be much weaker than they really were. Every time aliens watched human military exercises, they saw old and slow weapons. Every time aliens looked at human ships, they saw simple designs that looked weak, but it was all fake. The real human military was hidden away, waiting for the right moment. On Earth, Admiral Kevin Blake was sitting in a meeting with President Linda Carter. The president was a strong woman who had been planning for this day since she took office. Defense Secretary Ryan Hughes was also there, along with several other important people. "The message from Vorthik just came in," Blake said. "They're demanding we leave 12 star systems. They think we're too scared to fight back." President Carter nodded. "How long do we have?" 72 hours, Blake answered. "But we don't need that long. Our ships are already in position." The president looked out the window at the city below. Millions of people were living their normal lives, not knowing that the biggest moment in human history was about to happen. "Are you sure our plan will work?" she asked. Blake smiled. "Madam President, the aliens have been watching us for 50 years. In all that time, they've never seen our real military. They think our best weapons are simple missiles and laser guns. They have no idea what we can really do." Back in space, Captain Lisa Grant was on her patrol ship, the Defiant. She was near the edge of human space, close to one of the colonies the aliens wanted humans to leave. Lisa had been a military pilot for 15 years, but she had never been in a real battle. Her radar officer, Lieutenant Mike Stevens, called out, "Captain, I'm seeing 3 alien ships approaching. They're Zephyrian scouts." Lisa looked at the screen. The alien ships were beautiful, with smooth curves and bright blue lights. They moved through space like graceful dancers. But Lisa knew they were also very dangerous. "They're scanning our mining platform," Mike said. "Wait, they're powering up weapons." Lisa watched as the alien ships fired blue beams at the mining platform. The beams hit the platform's shields and made them flicker. But the aliens weren't trying to destroy it. They were just showing off their power. "Captain, they're sending U.S. a message," the communication officer said. "Put it through," Lisa ordered. A Zephyrian voice came through the speakers. "Human vessel, you have witnessed our power. Your shields are weak. Your weapons are primitive. Leave this system now, or we will disable your ship too." Lisa wanted to fire back, but she had her orders. She had to act scared and weak. We understand. We're leaving now." The alien ships watched as the Defiance slowly moved away. Lisa hated acting like a coward, but she knew it was important. The aliens needed to think humans were easy to defeat. As her ship flew back toward Earth, Lisa smiled. In less than 3 days, these same aliens would learn the truth about human military power, and it would be a lesson they would never forget. Colonel Sam Porter walked through the long metal hallway deep under the Colorado mountains. The walls were thick and strong, built to keep secrets safe. He had been walking for 10 minutes, going deeper and deeper into the mountain. Finally, he reached a heavy door marked with warning signs. Sam put his hand on a scanner. The machine beeped, and the door opened with a soft hiss. Inside, Dr. Helen Murphy was waiting for him. She was a small woman with gray hair and smart eyes. She had been working on secret projects for the government for 20 years. "Hello, Sam," Helen said. "Are you ready to see what we've been hiding from the aliens?" Sam nodded. "The Zephyrians gave us their ultimatum this morning, 72 hours to leave 12 star systems. It's time to show them what humans can really do." Helen smiled and led him to a large window. Below them was a huge room filled with computers and screens. Hundreds of people were working at their stations, all of them part of a project called Masquerade. "For 50 years, we've been lying to the aliens," Helen said. "Every time they watched our military exercises, we made sure they saw weak weapons and slow ships. Every time they studied our technology, we showed them things that were 30 years out of date." Sam looked at the screens showing alien ships moving through space, and they believed it all. "Why wouldn't they?" Helen asked. "When they first met us, humans had just learned how to travel between stars. To them, we looked like children playing with toys. They never thought we could learn and grow so fast." Helen walked to another window. This one showed a different room where engineers were working on strange machines. "The aliens think our best weapons are simple missiles and laser guns. They have no idea that we've been building plasma cannons and particle beams for decades." Sam stared at the machines. They looked nothing like the weapons the aliens had seen in human military parades. These were smooth and deadly, with power sources that could light up whole cities. "What about our ships?" Sam asked. Helen laughed. "That's the best part. The aliens think our fastest ships can barely reach half the speed of light. They don't know about our antimatter engines. They've never seen our real warships." She pressed a button on her tablet. The screen changed to show a view of space near Titan, one of Saturn's moons. At first, Sam couldn't see anything. Then, slowly, shapes began to appear. They looked like ghosts becoming solid. Stealth technology, Helen explained. We've been hiding our real fleet inside asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. The aliens have been looking right at them for years without knowing they were there. Sam counted the ships as they appeared on the screen. There were dozens of them, then hundreds, then thousands. Each one was bigger than anything the aliens had ever seen from humans. How many ships do we have? Sam asked. More than the aliens can imagine, Helen said. We've been building them in secret factories throughout the solar system. Some are hidden in the asteroid belt. Others are built inside hollowed-out moons. The aliens think we have maybe 100 warships. We actually have over 3,000. On Titan, Captain Tony Richards was watching his own screens. He commanded the secret human base hidden under the moon's ice. For 10 years, he had been waiting for this moment. Now, finally, it was time to wake up the sleeping fleet. All ships, this is Titan Base. Tony spoke into his microphone. Operation Masquerade is ending. Repeat, Operation Masquerade is ending. All stealth ships, prepare for combat status. Around the solar system, thousands of human ships began to stir. They had been floating in space like sleeping giants, invisible to alien sensors. Now they were waking up, and soon they would show the galaxy what humans could really do. Back in the mountain, Helen was showing Sam more secrets. The aliens think we're stupid because we use primitive kinetic weapons. They prefer energy weapons like plasma cannons and laser beams. But they don't understand that our kinetic weapons are actually railguns that can punch through any armor. Sam looked at the designs on Helen's screen. The weapons looked simple, but the math behind them was incredible. How fast do these projectiles move? Fast enough to crack a planet, Helen said. The aliens' quantum shields can stop energy weapons, but they can't stop a piece of metal moving at 90% the speed of light. Helen pulled up another file. And speaking of shields, the aliens think our defensive systems are weak. They've seen us use simple energy barriers that flicker and fail. They don't know about our real shields. The screen showed a new type of protection system. Instead of just stopping attacks, it could bend them around a ship or even send them back at the attacker. We learned this technology from the ruins on Mars, Helen explained. The aliens know we found some old buildings there, but they think we just took a few metal tools and art objects. They have no idea we found working computers and weapon designs. Sam remembered the Mars discovery. 20 years ago, human archaeologists had found the remains of an ancient civilization buried under the red planet's surface. The aliens had been told it was just old pottery and wall paintings. The truth was much more exciting. The beings who lived on Mars were more advanced than any current galactic civilization, Helen continued. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of what the aliens have now, and we've been studying it, learning from it, and improving it. Meanwhile, in space, the Zephyrian fleet was moving toward human colonies. Admiral Vorthik was confident that the humans would surrender without a fight. His ships were the pride of the Zephyrian military, each one capable of destroying a human city. But Vorthik had made a mistake. He had believed everything the humans wanted him to believe. He thought human weapons were weak and human ships were slow. He had no idea that every piece of information he had about human military power was carefully crafted lies. On his flagship, Vorthik was talking to his officers. The humans have not responded to our ultimatum, he said. They are probably too frightened to even send a message. When we arrive at their colonies, they will surrender immediately. His tactical officer, a young Zephyrian named Kresh, looked at the star charts. Admiral, should we prepare for battle? Vorthik laughed. Battle? Against humans? We could defeat their entire fleet with one ship. No, Kresh, this will not be a battle. This will be a demonstration of why primitives should not play with technology. They don't understand. Back on Earth, President Carter was meeting with her top advisors. General Kate Williams, the head of strategic planning, was explaining the final details of the plan. The aliens will reach our colonies in 18 hours. Kate said, "Our ships are already in position. The moment they attack, we drop the masquerade and show them what we can really do." President Carter looked around the room at her advisors. These people had been planning this moment for decades. Are we sure this is the right choice? Once we reveal our true power, there's no going back. Admiral Blake nodded. "Madam President, the aliens have been treating us like children for 50 years. They've demanded we stay in certain areas of space. They've told us what technology we can and cannot use. They've made it clear that they see us as inferior beings. But after tomorrow," General Williams added, "they'll know the truth. Humans are not the weakest species in the galaxy. We might just be the strongest." President Carter made her decision. "Do it. Send the signal to all our hidden fleets. It's time to show the galaxy who we really are." The human colony of New Haven was a peaceful place. It had farms, schools, and small cities where 50,000 people lived normal lives. The planet had blue skies and green fields, just like Earth. Children played in the parks while their parents worked in offices and factories. But today was different. Today, a Zephyrian fleet was coming. Captain Dan Sullivan stood on the bridge of his ship, the Retribution. To anyone watching, it looked like a normal human cruiser. It was about half the size of a Zephyrian warship, with simple gray armor and basic weapons. The aliens had seen ships like this many times before, and they always thought they were weak. But the Retribution was not what it seemed. "Captain, the alien fleet is dropping out of hyperspace," reported Lieutenant Commander Rachel Green from the command center on New Haven's surface. "I count 47 ships, all Zephyrian design." Dan looked at his tactical display. The alien ships were beautiful, with smooth blue hulls and elegant curves. They moved through space like dancers, confident and graceful. Admiral Vorthic's flagship was the largest, nearly twice the size of any human ship the aliens had ever seen. "They're taking positions around the planet," Rachel continued. "They're not attacking yet. I think they're waiting for us to surrender." Dan smiled. "Well, let's not keep them waiting. Open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship." The main screen flickered to life. Admiral Vorthic appeared, his blue skin gleaming and his yellow eyes full of arrogance. Behind him, Dan could see the alien bridge with its crystal controls and flowing designs. "Human vessel," Vorthic said, his voice deep and commanding. "I am Admiral Vorthic of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You are in violation of Galactic Council law. Surrender immediately, and we will allow your people to evacuate peacefully." Dan stepped forward. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. "Admiral Vorthic, I am Captain Dan Sullivan of the human ship Retribution. Before we talk about surrender, I have a question." "For you?" Vorthic looked surprised. Humans usually begged for mercy when faced with Zephyrian power. "What question?" "Did you do your homework?" The alien admiral's face showed confusion. "Homework? What is this word?" Dan's smile grew wider. "It means studying and learning before you act. You've been watching humans for 50 years, Vorthic. But you never really learned anything about us, did you?" Vorthic's expression changed to anger. "I have learned that humans are primitive. Your weapons are weak. Your ships are slow. You cannot stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire." "That's what we wanted you to think," Dan said quietly. Before Vorthic could respond, Dan gave a signal to his crew. "Drop the masquerade." The Retribution began to change. The simple gray armor plating slid away, revealing gleaming metal underneath. The ship's hull expanded as hidden sections unfolded. Weapon ports opened along the sides, showing cannons that the aliens had never seen before. The ship grew from a small cruiser to a massive dreadnought in just 30 seconds. On the alien flagship, Vorthic's officers were shouting in their own language. Their sensors were going crazy, showing energy readings that should have been impossible. "What? What is this?" Vorthic whispered. "This is a human warship," Dan replied. "The real thing. Not the toys we've been showing you for 50 years. The Retribution's weapons powered up. Energy flowed through systems that used technology far beyond anything the Zephyrians had. The ship's shields activated, creating a barrier that made the Suziv's air around it shimmer like water. Impossible, Vorthic said. Our intelligence reports say humans have primitive technology. Your weapons cannot penetrate our quantum shields. Your intelligence reports are wrong, Dan said. We wrote them. The first shot came from the Retribution's main cannon. It was not the simple laser beam the aliens expected. Instead, it was a concentrated stream of particles moving at incredible speed. The beam struck Vorthic's flagship directly in the center. The Zephyrian quantum shields, which had never failed before, lasted exactly 2 seconds. The beam punched through them like they were made of paper. It tore through the ship's hull, causing explosions all along its length. Return fire. Vorthic screamed. All ships, attack the human vessel. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons sent streams of superheated gas toward the Retribution. Energy beams tried to slice through its armor. Quantum torpedoes exploded around it in brilliant flashes of light, but nothing worked. The human ship's shields absorbed every attack. Weapons that could destroy cities barely made the shields flicker. How is this possible? Vorthic demanded. His tactical officer, Kresh, was staring at his instruments in disbelief. Admiral, their shields are not like ours. They're not just stopping our weapons. They're absorbing the energy and using it to make themselves stronger. Dan watched as the alien attacks made his ship's power levels rise. Thank you for the free energy, he said calmly. Now let me show you what we can do with it. The Retribution fired again. This time, it was not just one beam, but dozens. Each one found a different alien ship. The Zephyrian vessels, which had seemed so powerful just moments before, began to explode one by one. On New Haven's surface, Rachel was coordinating the battle from her command bunker. Captain Sullivan were detecting more alien ships jumping into the system. It looks like Vorthic called for backup. How many? Dan asked. 200 more ships, all different species. I see Keltheron Republic cruisers, Vorthan destroyers, and Nexus battleships. They're all coming to help the Zephyrians. Done. Nodded. Good. The more the better. It's time to show the entire galaxy what humans can really do. High above the planet, space began to change. The area around New Haven, which had seemed empty just moments before, suddenly filled with ships. They appeared out of nowhere, as if they had been invisible. Steve Parker was flying one of the human fighters that had just dropped its stealth field. To the aliens, human fighters had always looked like simple metal boxes with weak engines. But Steve's fighter was nothing like that. It moved through space like a living thing, turning and spinning in ways that should have been impossible. This is Pilot Steve Parker to all human fighters, he said into his radio. The masquerade is over. Show them what our ships can really do. The human fighters began to dance through space, moving in patterns that made the alien pilots dizzy. Just watching them, they could turn completely around while still flying forward. They could stop in the middle of space and then accelerate to incredible speeds in an instant. How are they doing that? Kresh asked, watching the human fighters on his screen. Gravity manipulation, Dan answered from the Retribution. We learned it from the ruins on Mars. We can control gravity the same way you control your plasma cannons. The battle was turning into a disaster for the aliens. Their weapons could not penetrate human shields. Their ships could not match human speed and maneuverability. And more human vessels kept appearing, each one more advanced than anything the aliens had ever seen. Admiral Vorthic's flagship was dying. Explosions rocked the ship as its systems failed one by one. The bridge was filled with smoke and sparks. "Admiral," Kresh said, "we have to retreat. We cannot win this battle." But Vorthic was not listening. He was staring at the tactical display, watching his fleet being destroyed by humans he had thought were primitives. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. "This is happening," Dan said, "from the retribution. And it's happening because you made the same mistake that every bully makes. You thought being bigger and louder made you stronger. But you were wrong. The retribution fired one final shot. This one was different from the others. Instead of destroying Vorthic's ship, it disabled all of its systems. The great Zephyrian flagship went dark, floating helplessly in space. "Admiral Vorthic," Dan said, "you have one chance to save what's left of your fleet. Surrender now, and we'll let you go home. But if you ever threaten humans again, we'll finish what we started today." Vorthic looked around his ruined bridge. Half of his fleet was gone. The other half was retreating as fast as they could. In less than an hour, the mighty Zephyrian Empire had been humbled by a species they had thought was weak. We surrender," Vorthic said quietly. Dan nodded. "Smart choice. Now go home and tell your people what you learned here today. Tell them that humans are not primitives. Tell them that we've been hiding our true strength for 50 years. And tell them that the next time someone threatens us, we won't be so merciful." As the surviving alien ships limped away from New Haven, Dan looked out at the stars. The masquerade was over. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. The news traveled fast across the galaxy. Within hours, every alien civilization knew what had happened at New Haven. The Zephyrian Empire, the strongest military force in known space, had been defeated by humans in less than 1 hour at first. Many aliens did not believe the reports. Humans were supposed to be primitive. Their weapons were weak and their ships were slow. How could they possibly defeat the mighty Zephyrian fleet? But the proof was undeniable. Admiral Vorthic himself had sent the message to the Galactic Council. His voice was shaking as he spoke. "The humans have been hiding their true strength. They are not primitives. They are apex predators. We have made a terrible mistake." On the planet Kelthar, Admiral Vyses of the Keltharan Republic was meeting with her war council. The Keltharians were tall, thin beings with silver skin and large, black eyes. They had been allies of the Zephyrians for 300 years. "This has to be some kind of trick," Admiral Vyses said. "The humans could not have defeated Vorthic's fleet. Our intelligence about their military capabilities is very detailed." Her chief intelligence officer, a nervous Keltharian named Vex, was looking at his reports. "Admiral, we have been monitoring human military exercises for decades. We have recorded their weapons tests and ship specifications. According to our data, they should not have been able to win this battle." "Then explain what happened," Vyses demanded. Vex's large eyes grew even wider. "Admiral, what if the humans have been lying to us? What if everything we think we know about their military is false?" Before Vyses could answer, her communications officer announced an incoming message. "Admiral, we have a transmission from the human fleet. They are requesting permission to enter our star system." Vyses stood up quickly. "How many ships?" "One, Admiral." "A single human vessel." Vyses relaxed slightly. One human ship was not a threat, even if the reports about their new weapons were true. "Let them approach, but keep our defense fleet ready." 20 minutes later, A human ship appeared at the edge of the Keltharian system. It looked like a normal human cruiser, similar to the ones the Keltharians had seen many times before. But after what happened at New Haven, Theises was not taking any chances. "This is Captain Maria Santos of the human ship Liberator," came a voice from the approaching vessel. "I am requesting permission to demonstrate something to your government." Theises opened a communication channel. "This is Admiral Theises of the Keltharian Republic. State your intentions, human." "I'm here to show you the same thing we showed the Zephyrians," Maria replied. "The truth about human military power." Theises felt a chill run down her spine. "You have one ship, Captain Santos. We have over 200 vessels protecting this system. Are you threatening us?" Maria's voice was calm and friendly. "I'm not threatening anyone, Admiral. I'm just offering a demonstration. Your defense grid is very impressive." "I'm sure it would. Take hours for a normal fleet to break through it." "It would take days," Theises said proudly. "Our quantum barriers and plasma networks are the strongest in the galaxy." "That's what I thought," Maria said. "Shall we begin?" Before Theises could ask what she meant, the human ship began to change. Just like the retribution at New Haven, the simple exterior fell away to reveal something much larger and more complex underneath. The ship grew from a small cruiser to a massive battleship in seconds. "That's impossible," Vex whispered. "Our sensors showed it as a light cruiser." "Your sensors showed what we wanted them to show." Maria's voice came through the speakers. "We've been using holographic camouflage for 30 years. Every human ship you've ever seen has been wearing a disguise." The Liberator began to move toward Kelthar's defensive perimeter. The automated defense systems immediately activated, sending streams of plasma and energy beams toward the approaching ship. These were the same weapons that had destroyed entire fleets in the past, but just like at New Haven, the human ships' shields absorbed every attack. The energy that should have destroyed it only made it stronger. "Begin Phase 2, Maria announced. The Liberator's weapons powered up. Instead of the simple lasers the Keltharians expected, exotic energy beams lanced out from the ship. They struck the defense satellites and space stations that protected the system. In 12 minutes, the entire Keltharian defense grid was gone. 200 years of construction, representing the most advanced military technology in the Republic, had been swept away by a single human ship. Admiral Theises stared at her tactical display in shock. Every defensive position was either destroyed or disabled. The space around her home planet, which had been protected by an impenetrable barrier just minutes before, was now completely open. "How?" she whispered. "The same way we did everything else," Maria replied. "We studied your defenses for decades. We learned how your quantum barriers work. We figured out how to get past your plasma networks. And then we built weapons specifically designed to defeat them." On Earth, President Linda Carter was addressing the planet. She stood behind a podium in the White House, with Admiral Blake and General Williams beside her. The speech was being broadcast to every human colony and every alien government. "My fellow humans," she began, "today marks the end of an era. For 50 years, we have allowed other species to believe that we were weak and primitive. We did this not because we were afraid, but because we were smart." She looked directly into the camera. "We knew that if the galaxy understood our true capabilities, they would have united against us. So we chose to hide our strength while we studied their weaknesses." The president activated a holographic display that showed the human fleet emerging from hiding places throughout the galaxy. Ships appeared from asteroid fields, gas giant atmospheres, and empty space where nothing had been visible before. "The human fleet consists of over 3,000 warships," she continued. "Each one is more advanced than anything any other species has ever built. Our weapons can penetrate any defense. Our shields can absorb any attack. Our ships can travel faster and maneuver better than any vessel in the galaxy. She paused to let the information sink in. But we are not conquerors. We do not want to rule over other species. We simply want to be treated as equals, not as inferior beings who need to be managed and controlled. Dr. Helen Murphy was also giving a presentation, but hers was for the Galactic Council's Science Committee. She stood in a large chamber filled with representatives from dozens of alien species. Many of them looked terrified. The technology we have revealed today comes from 3 sources, Helen explained. First, our own research and development, which has been focused on military applications for over a century. Second, reverse engineering of alien technology that we have observed and studied. And third, archaeological discoveries from the ruins on Mars. A Nexus representative, a being that looked like a walking tree, raised one of its branch-like arms. Dr. Murphy, our records show that the Mars ruins contained only primitive artifacts, stone tools and wall paintings. Helen smiled. That's what we told you. In reality, we found a complete technological database from a civilization that was far more advanced than any current galactic species. We've been studying their knowledge for 20 years. The chamber erupted in concerned voices. Representatives from different species began arguing with each other, trying to figure out how they had been so completely fooled. The beings who once lived on Mars had mastered gravity manipulation, antimatter production, and quantum mechanics in ways that we are still learning to understand. Helen continued. They left behind blueprints for weapons and defenses that make current galactic technology look primitive. Meanwhile, Colonel Sam Porter was releasing classified information to intelligence agencies throughout the galaxy. The files showed the true extent of human military preparation. Every human cargo ship is actually a disguised weapons platform, he explained to a gathering of alien intelligence officers. Every human mining operation is actually a weapons factory. Every human research station is actually a military listening post. He activated a holographic map of human space. We have been monitoring your communications, studying your military tactics, and preparing countermeasures for every possible attack. We know the location of every alien military base, the specifications of every alien warship, and the weaknesses of every alien defense system. The aliens in the room looked at each other with growing fear. They had thought they were the ones doing the spying. They had never imagined that humans were watching them just as carefully. The human philosophy is simple, Porter continued. We prepare for war so that we can have peace. We build weapons so that we never have to use them. And we study our potential enemies so that we can defeat them if they force us to fight. Back on Kelthar, Admiral Vises was trying to understand what had happened to her defense grid. Her chief engineer, a young Keltharian named Zara, was examining the wreckage of the wreckage. Destroyed satellites. Admiral, Zara reported, the human weapons were unlike anything we've ever seen. They didn't just destroy our equipment. They seemed to understand exactly how our technology worked and targeted the most vulnerable points. Vises looked at the tactical display showing the human ship still floating near her planet. Can we rebuild our defenses? Not against weapons like these, Zara said sadly. The humans have found ways to defeat every defensive system we know how to build. If they wanted tea. The Galactic Council chamber was chaos. Representatives from dozens of alien species were shouting at each other in languages that filled the air with clicks, whistles, and roars. The great hall that had once been a symbol of order and cooperation now looked like a battlefield. Admiral Kevin Blake walked into the chamber with a small group of human delegates. Behind him came Commodore Lisa Grant, who had been promoted after her brave actions during the crisis. Colonel Sam Porter followed, carrying data files that contained information the aliens never thought they would see. The moment the humans entered, the chamber fell silent. Every alien eye turned to look at them. Some showed fear, others anger, and a few showed something that might have been respect. Blake walked to the center of the chamber where a speaking platform waited. The platform was designed for much taller beings than humans, but Blake climbed the steps without hesitation. When he reached the top, his voice carried clearly through the chamber's speakers. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," he began. "I am Admiral Kevin Blake of the Human Defense Force. I come here today not as a conqueror, but as someone who wants to discuss the future." A tall, insect-like being from the Nexus Collective clicked its mandibles together angrily. "Human, your species has deceived us for 50 years. You have made fools of us all." Blake nodded calmly. "Yes, we did. And we had good reasons for doing so." He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it had been 50 years ago. "When we first met your civilizations, we were indeed primitive compared to you. Our technology was basic, our ships were slow, and our weapons were simple. We knew that if we showed you how quickly we could learn and grow, you would see us as a threat." The display changed to show human space over the last 5 decades. "So we made a choice. We would let you think we were weak while we studied your technologies, learned from your mistakes, and built defenses against your weapons." A representative from the Vorthan Empire, a being covered in gray scales, hissed through his translator. "You spied on us. You stole our secrets. We observed you," Blake corrected. "Everything we learned came from watching your public demonstrations, studying your commercial technology, and analyzing the ships you sent to our space. We never hacked your computers or infiltrated your governments. We simply paid attention." Blake pressed another control, and the display showed the true size of the human fleet. Thousands of ships appeared on the hologram, each one larger and more advanced than anything the aliens had expected. "The result of our 50-year project is simple," Blake continued. "Humanity is now the strongest military force in the galaxy. Our ships are faster than yours. Our weapons are more powerful than yours. Our defenses are better than yours." The chamber erupted in angry voices again. Representatives demanded to know how this was possible. Some accused the humans of using illegal technology. Others called for immediate action against the human threat. Blake waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. "But here's what you need to understand. We don't want to conquer anyone. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be treated as equals." President Linda Carter's image appeared on screens throughout the chamber. She was speaking from Earth, addressing the entire Galactic Council. "For 50 years, the President said, your civilizations have treated humanity like children. You've told us where we can and cannot go in space. You've decided what technology we're allowed to use. You've made it clear that you see us as inferior, beings who need to be managed." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "That ends today. From now on, humanity will be treated as an equal partner in galactic affairs, or we will go our own way. The choice is yours." In the Zephyrian home system, the remains of Admiral Vorthic's fleet were limping back to port. The proud Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled over dozens of star systems for centuries, was in chaos. Their military had been humbled by a species they had thought was primitive. Emperor Zethrock, the ruler of the Zephyrian Empire, was meeting with his council in the Imperial Palace. The Emperor was an old Zephyrian with scars from 100 battles. He had never known defeat until today. "How many ships did we lose?" the Emperor asked. "Half the fleet, Your Majesty," replied General Kess. "The humans destroyed 24. Warships and disabled dozens more. Admiral Vorthic's flagship barely escaped." The Emperor's yellow eyes flashed with anger. "And what of our allies? Surely the other species will help us fight these humans?" General Kess looked uncomfortable. "Your Majesty, the Keltharian Republic has already announced that they will not support any military action against humanity. The Nexus Collective is demanding that we negotiate with the humans. Even our closest allies are abandoning us. Emperor. Zethric stood up and walked to a window that looked out over his capital city. For 300 years, the Zephyrians had been the strongest military force in the galaxy. Now, in a single day, that had changed forever. What do our intelligence services say about human capabilities? The Emperor asked. They say we were completely wrong about everything, Cass admitted. The humans have been hiding technology that is decades ahead of ours. Their weapons can penetrate any armor we know how to build. Their ships can outrun anything in our fleet. The Emperor turned back to his council. Then we have no choice. Send a message to the human leadership. Tell them the Zephyrian Empire is willing to discuss new arrangements. Back on Earth, Admiral Blake was meeting with President Carter and her advisors. The response from the galaxy had been mixed, but the message was clear. Humanity was now a major power that could not be ignored. The Zephyrians want to negotiate, Blake reported. So do the Caltharians and most of the smaller species. The Nexus Collective is demanding that we share our advanced technology with everyone. President Carter smiled. And what did you tell them? I told them that we're willing to discuss trade agreements and mutual defense treaties, Blake said. But our military technology stays with us. We've learned too much about galactic politics to give away our advantages. General Kate Williams, who had been monitoring alien communications, added her own report. Madam President, we're seeing significant changes in how other species view us. The fear is there, but so is respect. Several governments are already reaching out through diplomatic channels. What about the species that refuse to accept the new situation? The President asked. Blake's expression grew serious. There are a few. The hegemony of Arcturus is talking about forming a coalition to contain the human threat. Some of the smaller empires think they can band together and challenge us. Then we'll have to convince them otherwise, the President said. But we'll do it the same way we have done everything else. We'll be smart about it. 6 months later, the galaxy had settled into a new normal. The Galactic Council had been restructured to give humanity an equal voice in galactic affairs. Trade agreements were signed between human colonies and alien worlds. The threat of war had been replaced by the promise of cooperation. But the most important change was in how aliens looked at humans. No longer were they seen as primitive beings who had stumbled into space travel by accident. They were recognized as a species that could think strategically, plan for the long term, and execute complex deceptions that lasted for decades. Captain Dan Sullivan, now promoted to Admiral, was commanding the human fleet's patrol operations. His job was to make sure that the new peace was maintained and that no one forgot the lessons of the past year. He was standing on the bridge of his new flagship, the Retribution 2, when his communications officer announced an incoming message. From a Nexus exploration ship. Admiral, the alien captain said, we have discovered some unusual readings in the Centauri Nebula. Our scientists believe there may be artifacts from an unknown civilization. We would like to request human assistance in investigating. Sullivan smiled. A year ago, no alien species would have asked humans for help with anything important. Now, they recognized that human analytical skills and advanced technology made them valuable partners. We'll send a science vessel to assist you, Sullivan replied. Thank you for including us in the discovery. As the communication ended, Sullivan looked out at the stars. The galaxy was a different place now. Humans were no longer pretending to be weak. Aliens were no longer treating them like children. And for the first time in 50 years, there was real peace between the species. The moment when humans unveiled their true military power had changed everything. But more importantly, it had shown the galaxy that the most dangerous species was not necessarily the one with the biggest guns or the fastest ships. Sometimes, the most dangerous species was the one that was smart enough to hide its true strength until the perfect moment to reveal it. Sullivan thought about all the years of careful planning, patient waiting, and strategic deception that had led to this moment. Humanity had played the longest game in galactic history, and they had won. Now came the even bigger challenge, using their power wisely and building a future where all species could thrive together. But if there was one thing humans had proven, it was that they were very good at thinking ahead and planning for the long term. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. And that, Sullivan thought, was exactly how it should be.
Lieutenant Commander Allison Wright stood at the large window of the observation deck. She watched the training field below where 20 human cadets ran through their exercises. Their movements were quick and powerful. Even from this distance, she could see the determination on their faces. These young men and women were the first humans to train at the Galactic Coalition Academy. Most aliens in the Coalition viewed humans as dangerous death worlders, but Wright saw something else. She saw the future of cooperation between different species across the stars. The morning sun reflected off the metal buildings of the Academy. The air smelled clean here on Centauri Prime, much different from the crowded cities of Earth. Wright checked her tablet, reviewing the performance scores of her cadets. They were impressive, even by human standards. By alien standards, they were almost frightening. Jack Harlow led the cadets through their morning drills. He was a tall young man who grew up on a farm in Iowa before joining the space program. His shoulders were broad and his arms strong from years of farm work. But it wasn't just his physical strength that made him special. Jack had a mind for tactics that impressed even the four-armed Varaxian combat teachers. "Left formation, move," Jack called out. The cadets responded instantly, shifting into a new pattern across the field. Melissa Garcia moved fastest of all. Before joining the academy, she had been a champion swimmer back on Earth. Her endurance was legendary among the cadets. She could run for hours without stopping while others fell behind, gasping for breath. "They're not ready," said a soft voice beside Wright. Wright turned to see Ambassador Kelthara, an Exorian with skin so thin it was almost see-through. The alien's large eyes blinked slowly as they watched the humans train. "The coalition races are uncomfortable with human integration," Kelthara continued. The ambassador's voice had a musical quality like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Many fear what humans might do if given access to advanced weapons and ships." Wright nodded, understanding the concern. "That's why we're starting small. Just training exercises on the outer rim planets, nothing dangerous." On the field below, Cadet Ryan Summers was helping Nicole Bennett with her rifle stance. Ryan specialized in weapons while Nicole was the group's expert in taking things apart and sometimes blowing them up. They worked well together, as did all the cadets. They had to. They represented all of humanity now. "When do they leave for their first off-world exercise?" asked Kelthara. "Tomorrow morning," Wright replied. "They'll run drills on Nexus 7. It's a small moon with similar gravity to Earth. Should be perfect for their first real-world experience." Daniel Peterson jogged across the field carrying a large medical kit. He was the team's doctor, with steady hands that never shook even in the most stressful simulations. Beside him ran Owen Fletcher, talking excitedly while using his hands to communicate. Owen had a gift for languages and had already mastered 6 alien tongues. "I've reviewed their mission," said Kelthara, still watching the humans with those large, unblinking eyes. "It seems safe enough. They establish a base, defend against simulated attacks, and follow coalition protocols." "Exactly," Wright said with a smile. "Nothing they can't handle." What neither of them knew was that across the galaxy on the dark side of a dead moon, the Kargan High Command was meeting. The Kargans were a species of tall, scaled beings with 4 eyes and powerful jaws. They had long viewed the Galactic Coalition as weak and unworthy of the space they controlled. Supreme Leader Drakthor slammed his clawed fist onto the table. "The time for watching is over. The Coalition grows stronger each cycle. Now they bring in these humans." He spat the word like it was poison. "We've seen the reports. These creatures evolved on a death world with gravity that would crush most species. They can endure pain that would kill our strongest warriors. If they join fully with the coalition, our advantage will be lost. The other Kargan leaders nodded in agreement. Their scales rattled with excitement at the thought of battle. We strike now, Drakthor continued, before they can prepare. Our first target will be here. He pointed to a holographic map showing a small moon, Nexus 7. It houses a minor coalition outpost and will soon host a training exercise for these human cadets. We will crush them quickly, showing the coalition how weak their new allies truly are. The Kargan generals roared their approval, not knowing that they were about to face something their military had never encountered before. Back at the academy, the day was ending. The cadets gathered in their common room excited about their first off-world mission. "I can't believe we're finally getting out there," said Laura Keller, the team's best shot. She could hit targets at distances that amazed even the Sniperian instructors. "Real aliens, real planets. Just remember the protocols," Jack reminded them all. "We're representatives of Earth now. Everything we do reflects on our entire species." Brandon Wilson laughed from his seat by the window. "No pressure, right?" "No joke," said Eric Mason, who sat next to him tinkering with a small device. "I heard the Arcturians still think we eat other species." "Well, don't do that and we should be fine," Melissa said with a grin, making everyone laugh. Stephanie Hill was the last to join them, carrying her tablet filled with data on Nexus 7. "I've been studying the environment. It's pretty close to Earth standard, just less oxygen in the atmosphere. We might feel a little short of breath at first, but nothing serious." Jack nodded, looking around at his fellow cadets, his friends. "Get some sleep, everyone. Tomorrow, we make history as the first human training squad in Coalition space." They all headed to their rooms full of excitement about their mission. None of them knew that their simple training exercise would soon turn into the first battle of an interstellar war, a battle that would change how the entire galaxy viewed humanity. Lieutenant Commander Wright stayed on the observation deck long after the cadets had gone. She watched the stars appear as darkness fell, wondering if she was doing the right thing sending these young people so far from home. They were well trained, yes, but still so new to the galaxy and its dangers. "Be safe," she whispered to the stars. "Come back to us." Across those same stars, the Kargan fleet was already moving into position, ready to strike Nexus 7 and the unsuspecting humans who would soon arrive there. The dropship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Nexus 7. Inside, 20 human cadets sat strapped into their seats, gripping their training rifles. Through the small windows, they could see the moon's surface coming closer. It was mostly covered in dense purple forests with patches of rocky plains scattered across the landscape. Cadet Ryan Summers felt his stomach twist, but not from the turbulence. This was their first real mission off Earth, and even though it was just a training exercise, he couldn't help feeling nervous. He glanced at Nicole Bennett sitting next to him. She was busy checking her demolitions kit, her fingers moving quickly over each tool and device. Nicole could take apart any machine blindfolded, a skill that had earned her top marks at the academy. Across from them sat Daniel Peterson, the team's medic. His eyes were closed, and his breathing was slow and steady. Everyone knew Daniel had the steadiest hands in the group. During their toughest training, when others panicked, Daniel remained calm. 5 minutes to landing, announced their Torlian instructor. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall with 4 muscular arms. All 4, hands now pointed to different parts of a holographic map floating in the center of the ship. "Remember, this is a standard training mission. You will establish a base, defend it from simulated attacks, and learn coalition protocols." Jack Harlow, the team leader, studied the map closely. "Sir, what's the situation with the coalition outpost? Will they be supporting our exercise?" The Torlian nodded his large head. "They are expecting us. The outpost has a small staff of 15 personnel who will observe but not interfere unless there is a real emergency." Owen Fletcher sat beside Jack, mouthing alien words to himself. As the team's communication specialist, he had learned 6 alien languages and was working on his 7th. The local dialect has some tricky sounds, he whispered to Jack. I've been practicing all week. The ship rocked suddenly, harder than before. Lights flickered inside the cabin. Just atmospheric interference, the Torlian instructor said, but his upper hands gripped a support bar tightly. Melissa Garcia, sitting in the front row, frowned. That didn't feel like turbulence, sir. Before the instructor could respond, their communication system crackled with static before going completely silent. The holographic map disappeared. Communication systems down, the pilot called from the cockpit. Switching to backup. Laura Keller, the team's sniper, moved to a window. She adjusted her glasses as she peered outside. There's smoke rising from the direction of the outpost, she said quietly. The cadets exchanged worried glances. This wasn't part of the training scenario they had been briefed on. The ship descended rapidly now, the pilot clearly in a hurry to land. When they touched down, it wasn't on the smooth landing pad they had expected, but in a clearing among the purple trees, about 2 miles from the outpost. Equipment check, Jack ordered, switching immediately to the command voice they all recognized from training. Full gear, live ammunition. He turned to the Torlian instructor. Sir, what are your orders? The alien's face was grim. This is not part of the exercise. Something is wrong. He tapped commands into his wrist device without success. All communications are being jammed. We need to reach the outpost and assess the situation. The rear door of the ship opened with a hiss, and the cadets filed out, their training kicking in automatically. They formed a defensive perimeter around the ship while Jack, Melissa, and the instructor discussed their next move. The air on Nexus 7 was thinner than Earth's, just as Stephanie Hill had predicted. The cadets took deeper breaths as they adjusted. The planet smelled strange, a mix of sweet flowers and something metallic. Movement in the trees, Laura called quietly, her sharp eyes scanning the forest's edge. About 200 yards east. Jack signaled for everyone to take cover. The cadets moved quickly, finding positions behind rocks and fallen trees. Owen Fletcher worked frantically with his communication device. The jamming is strong, but I might be able to break through on a narrower band. Keep trying, Jack said. Stephanie, what do we know about local wildlife? Could that be what Laura spotted? Stephanie shook her head. Nexus 7 has small herbivores and some flying creatures, but nothing large enough to register as the movement Laura saw. Suddenly, the unmistakable sound of energy weapons firing came from the direction of the outpost. The sound echoed through the forest, sending small flying creatures bursting from the trees in panic. That's not part of any training exercise, the Torlian instructor said, his voice tense. Those are Kargan heavy rifles. Kargans? Eric Mason asked. The coalition is at war with them? Not officially, the instructor replied, but there have been border disputes for years. Jack's mind raced. This wasn't a simulation anymore. This was real combat. He looked at his fellow cadets, seeing the same realization dawning on their faces. All right, listen up, he said, keeping his voice calm and firm. This isn't what we expected, but it's what we've got. Our first priority is to reach the outpost and help any survivors. Then we need to find a way to contact the coalition fleet. Brandon Wilson, who had been scouting ahead, returned quickly. I found a stream that leads toward the outpost. The banks are covered with dense vegetation. It would give us good cover to move closer. Jack nodded. Good work. We'll move along the stream. Laura, you and Eric take point. Keep your eyes open. The cadets moved out in formation, their training taking over despite the sudden change in circumstances. They advanced along the stream, staying low and moving quietly through the strange purple foliage. As they got closer to the outpost, they began to see signs of battle. Scorched trees, debris scattered across the ground, and the occasional gleam of metal from what might be ship parts. Laura, at the front of the group, suddenly held up her hand signaling everyone to stop. Through her scope, she could see figures. Moving around the outpost, they weren't coalition personnel. Kargans, she whispered when Jack crawled up beside her. At least 20 that I can see. They're setting up defensive positions. Jack studied the situation through his binoculars. The outpost showed signs of damage, with smoke rising from one section. He could see coalition personnel being herded into a central area guarded by armed Kargans. "They've taken prisoners," he said, "and they're digging in, not leaving." The Torlian instructor's face was grim. "This is no raid. This is an invasion force, likely the first wave." Daniel Peterson spoke up. "Some of those coalition personnel may need medical attention." Jack nodded. "First, we need more information. Owen, any luck with communications?" "Nothing yet," Owen replied, "but I might be able to tap into the outpost's backup systems if we get closer." Jack looked at his team. They were cadets, trained but untested. Now they faced a real enemy in what might be the first battle of a new war. But as he looked at their determined faces, he knew they were ready. "We're going to help those people," he said firmly. "Melissa, take Brandon and Stephanie and circle around to the east. Look for a weakness in their perimeter. Nicole, I need you to check what supplies we have that could be used as distractions or traps. The rest of you, we're going to find a better observation point and make a plan." As the cadets moved to their tasks, Owen Fletcher suddenly grabbed Jack's arm. "Wait," he said, his eyes wide. "I'm picking up a transmission. It's not coalition standard." "Kargans?" Jack asked. Owen shook his head. "No, it's a distress call. From another ship. There are more people out there." The mission had just gotten more complicated, but Jack's expression remained determined. They weren't just cadets anymore. They were soldiers in a war they never expected to fight. The human cadets gathered in a small cave they found near the stream. Outside, the purple forest of Nexus 7 grew darker as the planet's sun began to set. Jack Harlow spread out a rough map he had drawn of the area. "The Kargans control the outpost. Here," he said, pointing to a circle on the map. "They have about 20 soldiers that we can see, but there might be more inside." The Torlian instructor nodded, his forearms crossed over his chest. "The Kargans are methodical. They will have patrols searching the area soon." "What about the distress signal?" Melissa Garcia asked, looking at Owen Fletcher, who was still working with his communication device. "I've almost got it," Owen replied, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. "It's coming from about 3 miles north of here. The signal is weak, but I think it's from a coalition scout ship." Jack thought for a moment. "We need to split up. One team will check out the distress signal. The other will watch the outpost and look for a way to help the prisoners." "That's risky," the instructor warned. "You have limited weapons and no backup." Jack looked at his fellow cadets. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes, but they were also determined. "We didn't come all this way to hide in a cave." The instructor stared at Jack for a long moment, then nodded. "Your training was not just for show. What's your plan?" Jack pointed to different spots on his map. "Melissa will lead Nicole, Brandon, and Eric to find the source of the distress signal. They'll see if there are survivors who can help us. The rest of us will observe the outpost and look for weaknesses in the Kargan security." "What about me?" the instructor asked. "With respect, sir," Jack said carefully, "you stand out. The Kargans would spot you instantly. We need you to stay here and work with Owen to try to break through the jamming. If we can contact the coalition fleet, we might have a chance." The alien considered this, then agreed. "Your logic is sound, Cadet Harlow." The teams prepared quickly. Melissa checked her weapon, then looked at her team. "Stay close and move quietly. If we run into trouble, we retreat back here, no heroes." Nicole, Brandon, and Eric nodded. They all looked nervous but ready. Meanwhile, Jack briefed his team. "Laura, I need you to find a good position to watch the outpost with your scope. Stephanie, use your knowledge of coalition structures to find potential weak points. Daniel, prepare your medical supplies. We might need them soon." Ryan Summers checked his rifle. "And what will you be doing, Jack?" "I'm going to get closer to the outpost," Jack replied. "I need to see exactly what we're dealing with." As the two teams prepared to leave, Owen suddenly jumped up. "I've got it. The signal is clearer now." Everyone gathered around as a broken voice came through Owen's device. "Any coalition forces and under attack? 5 survivors. Low on supplies. Can you respond?" Jack asked. Owen shook his head. "Not without the Kargans hearing us too. But now we know there are people alive out there. Melissa's team left. First, moving quietly through the forest toward the distress signal. The purple plants around them seemed to glow slightly in the growing darkness, providing just enough light to see. "This is crazy," Eric whispered as they walked. "We're supposed to be running drills, not fighting an actual war." "Consider it extra credit," Nicole replied with a small smile, trying to keep spirits up. Brandon moved ahead, using skills he learned growing up in the wilderness of Montana. He stopped suddenly, raising his hand. The others froze. "Kargan patrol," he whispered, pointing through the trees. About 50 yards away, 3 Kargan soldiers moved through the forest. They were tall, with scaled skin and 4 eyes that seemed to glow yellow in the dim light. They carried large energy rifles and wore armor that reflected the purple glow of the plants. Melissa signaled her team to stay low and still. They barely breathed as the patrol passed by, just 30 feet from their position. Once the danger had passed, they continued more carefully than before. Back near the outpost, Jack crawled through the underbrush, getting as close as he dared. From his new position, he could see the Kargan forces more clearly. They had set up energy barriers around the outpost and positioned guards at all entrances. The coalition prisoners sat in a group in the central courtyard. Jack counted 12, with some showing signs of injury. He recognized the species, mostly Arcturians and Galtonians, the typical staff for an outer rim outpost. Jack retreated back to where Laura had set up her observation position in a tall tree. "What do you see?" he asked. Laura adjusted her scope. "They're bringing equipment from their ships into the outpost. Looks like they plan to stay a while, and they've set up a communication array on the roof." "That must be what's jamming our signals," Jack said. "If we could disable it." "I might be able to hit it from here," Laura offered, "but it would alert every Kargan to our presence." Jack shook his head. "We need a better plan." Meanwhile, Melissa's team had reached the source of the distress signal. It was a small coalition scout ship that had crash-landed in a clearing. The ship was damaged but mostly intact. "Hello?" Melissa called quietly as they approached. "We're from the Galactic Coalition Academy." A figure appeared at the ship's hatch, holding a weapon. "Stay where you are." "We're human cadets," Melissa said, raising her hands. "We're here to help." The figure hesitated, then lowered the weapon. "Humans? What are you doing on Nexus 7? "We were supposed to be training," Eric explained as they moved closer. "Instead, we found the outpost under attack." The figure stepped out of the shadows. It was a Vexillion, a bird-like species known for their piloting skills. His feathers were ruffled and stained, and one wing hung awkwardly at his side. "I'm Lieutenant Ziv," he said. "We were on patrol when the Kargans attacked. They shot us, down before we could send a warning." He looked at the 4 human cadets with his sharp eyes. "Are you all that's left of the coalition forces?" "There are more of us," Melissa explained. 20 cadets total, plus our instructor. "We're trying to help the prisoners at the outpost." Ziv clicked his beak in what might have been a laugh. 20 cadets against a Kargan invasion force? That's suicide." Brandon stepped forward. "How many Kargans are there?" "At least 50 that we saw," Ziv replied. "With more probably on the way, this isn't just a raid. They're establishing a foothold for a larger force." Nicole had been examining the ship. "Your communications are damaged, but I might be able to repair them. If we could send a message to the coalition fleet." Ziv nodded. "Our engineer was killed in the crash. If you can fix it, there's a chance." Back at the cave, Owen and the Torlian instructor worked on breaking through the jamming signal. "The Kargans are using a rotating frequency," the instructor explained. "Standard military procedure." Owen thought for a moment. "What if we don't try to break it? What if we ride it instead?" "Explain," the instructor said. "If we can identify the pattern of rotation, we might be able to piggyback our signal on theirs. They'd carry our message for us." The instructor's eyes widened. "That's not standard procedure. It might work." As night fully fell on Nexus 7, the human cadets prepared for action. Jack's team returned to the cave to share what they had learned about the outpost. Shortly after, Melissa's team arrived with Lieutenant Ziv and 4 other survivors from the scout ship. Jack looked at the assembled group. 20 human cadets, 6 coalition aliens, all looking to him for leadership. The odds were against them, but giving up wasn't an option. Here's what we know, Jack said to everyone. The Kargans have taken the outpost. They're jamming communications and bringing in equipment for a larger force. We have limited weapons and supplies. So we're doomed, one of the scout ship survivors said. Jack shook his head. No, we have something the Kargans don't expect. What's that? Ziv asked. Jack looked at his fellow humans. Us, humans, Deathworlders. He smiled slightly. And we're about to show the Kargans why that name matters. The human cadets worked through the night. They gathered around a small light in the cave, careful not to make it too bright. Jack Harlow stood in the center, explaining his plan to everyone. The Kargans have 3 weaknesses, he said. First, they don't know we're here. Second, they're used to fighting enemies who use the same tactics they do. And third, they've never fought humans before. Lieutenant Ziv, the bird-like Vexillian from the crashed scout ship, clicked his beak. Your confidence is admirable, but the Kargans are elite warriors. They've conquered many worlds. But not Earth, Ryan Summers pointed out. Not a death world. Jack nodded. We won't beat them with direct attacks. We'll use what makes us different. He turned to Brandon Wilson. Brandon, you grew up hunting in the forests of Montana. Could you set traps using what we have here? Brandon thought for a moment, looking at the supplies they had gathered. I can make snares and tripwires, nothing fancy, but they'll work. Good. You and Eric will set traps around the outpost. Not to kill, but to confuse and separate the Kargan patrols. Jack then looked at Nicole Bennett. Nicole, we need explosives. Something loud, but not deadly. Nicole smiled. I can make noisemakers from some of the gear in our dropship. They'll sound like weapons fire, but won't hurt anyone. Perfect. Jack continued assigning tasks. Melissa, you and your team will create a distraction on the east side of the outpost. Laura will find a position to take out the communication jammer on the roof when I give the signal. And what will you be doing? Stephanie Hill asked. I'll be leading a small team to free the prisoners while the Kargans are distracted, Jack replied. The Torlian instructor watched with interest. This plan is unconventional. That's the point, Jack said. The Kargans expect conventional. Owen Fletcher raised his hand. I've been working on the communications problem. If Laura can disable their jammer, I think I can send a message to the Coalition fleet. I've modified our transmitter to boost the signal. How long would it take the fleet to get here? Jack asked Ziv. The Vexillian thought for a moment. The nearest patrol is about 6 hours away at maximum speed. Then we need to hold out for 6 hours after we send the message, Jack said. We can do that. Daniel Peterson, the team's medic, spoke up. I've been thinking about our physical advantages. Humans evolved on a high-gravity planet with 21% oxygen atmosphere. Nexus 7 has lower gravity and less oxygen than Earth. What does that mean for us? Melissa asked. It means we can move faster and longer than the Kargans expect, Daniel explained. They'll tire before we do. Jack smiled. That's exactly the kind of advantage we need. Everyone gets some rest. We move out before dawn. As the others prepared their equipment or tried to sleep, Melissa approached Jack, who was studying the map again. This isn't what we signed up for, she said quietly. Jack looked up at her. No, it's not. But it's what we've got. Some of us might not make it, she said, her voice steady but concerned. I know, Jack replied. That's why I need you leading the distraction team. You're the best runner we have. If things go wrong, you can lead the Kargans away from the others. Melissa nodded. I won't let you down. As the night passed, the human cadets prepared themselves. They checked their weapons, adjusted their gear, and mentally prepared for what was to come. Brandon and Eric slipped out into the darkness to set their traps. They moved silently through the purple forest, using the skills they had learned in training. Brandon showed Eric how to use vines and branches to create simple but effective snares. The key is to place them where they won't be noticed, Brandon whispered as he set a tripwire across a path. When a Kargan patrol comes through here, they'll never see it until it's too late. Nicole worked with the equipment from their dropship, creating devices that would make loud bangs and flashes when activated. These will make them think they're under attack from all sides, she explained to Stephanie, who was helping her. Before dawn, Jack gathered everyone together one last time. The cave was quiet as 20 human cadets and 6 alien allies listened to his final instructions. Remember, our goal is to free the prisoners and contact the coalition fleet, Jack said. We're not trying to defeat the entire Kargan force. We just need to hold out until help arrives. The Torlian instructor stepped forward. I have watched humans train for months, but I never truly understood what made your species special until now. You adapt. You find solutions where others see only problems. Jack nodded his thanks. Let's move out. They left the cave in groups, spreading out through the forest as the first light of dawn began to appear. Melissa led her team to the east side of the outpost, while Brandon and Eric checked their traps. Nicole positioned her noisemakers at strategic points around the perimeter. Laura found a tall tree with a clear view of the outpost roof and the communication jammer. She climbed up with her rifle and settled into position. In place, she whispered into her communicator. One by one, the other teams reported they were ready. Jack, Ryan, and Daniel crouched in the underbrush near the west entrance of the outpost, waiting for the signal to move. Now, Jack said into his communicator. Nicole activated her first noisemaker. A loud explosion echoed through the forest to the north of the outpost. Kargan soldiers rushed to investigate, weapons ready. Seconds later, another explosion sounded from the south, then another from the east. They're splitting up their forces, Ryan observed, as they watched Kargans running in different directions. On the east side, Melissa's team began making noise, drawing more Kargans in their direction. When a patrol of 5 Kargans approached their position, Melissa stepped out just long enough to be seen, then disappeared into the trees. The Kargans followed, chasing what they thought was an easy target. What they didn't know was that Melissa had been a champion runner on Earth. In the lower gravity of Nexus 7, she moved with incredible speed, leading the Kargans straight into the traps Brandon and Eric had set. The first Kargan hit a tripwire and fell hard. The second got caught in a snare that yanked him off his feet. The others stopped in confusion, suddenly unsure if they were the hunters or the hunted. Back at the outpost, the chaos was growing. Kargans rushed from point to point, trying to respond to what seemed like attacks from all sides. In the confusion, no one noticed Laura taking aim at the communication jammer on the roof. She took a deep breath, adjusted for the wind, and fired. Her shot hit perfectly, sending sparks flying from the jammer. Jammer down, she reported. Owen, you're up. Owen, back at the cave with the Torlian instructor, immediately began broadcasting their distress signal. Coalition Fleet, this is Cadet Owen Fletcher from Earth. Nexus 7 outpost is under Kargan attack. 20 cadets and 6 survivors requesting immediate assistance. At the west entrance, Jack saw his opportunity. Move in, he ordered. He, Ryan, and Daniel rushed forward, using the confusion to slip into the outpost unnoticed. Inside, they found 2 Kargan guards watching the prisoners. The humans moved quickly. Ryan tackled one guard while Jack engaged the other. The fight was brief but intense. The Kargans were strong, but the humans were faster than they expected. With both guards subdued, Jack quickly freed the prisoners. We're here to help, he told the surprised coalition personnel. But we need to move fast. Outside, the situation was escalating. The Kargan commander had realized they were under attack by a small force. He ordered his troops to regroup and search the forest systematically. What he didn't understand was who he was fighting. Humans didn't fight like any species he had encountered before. They didn't follow standard military protocols. They used the environment, set traps, created distractions, and disappeared into the forest only to strike again from another direction. The commander stood in the outpost control room, looking at reports of his scattered forces. He had come expecting an easy victory over a small coalition outpost. Instead, he found himself facing an enemy he couldn't predict or understand. "Find them," he roared. "Find these humans and destroy them." But the humans had no intention of being found. Not until the coalition fleet arrived to even the odds. 6 hours passed like a whirlwind of activity. The human cadets had freed the coalition prisoners and led them back to the cave. Now they defended their position against waves of increasingly frustrated Kargan soldiers. The Kargans had superior numbers and better weapons, but the humans had something else entirely: the adaptability of a species that evolved on a planet trying to kill them every day. Jack Harlow crouched behind a fallen log, catching his breath. Beside him, Ryan Summers fired carefully placed shots to keep the Kargans at bay. "How much longer?" Ryan asked, not taking his eyes off the forest ahead. Jack checked his timer. "The coalition fleet should be here any minute. We just need to hold out." Across their makeshift perimeter, Melissa Garcia and her team had set up a defensive position using branches and rocks. Every time the Kargans tried to advance, she and her team would appear briefly, fire a few shots, and vanish again before the Kargans could get a fix on their position. "They're learning," Melissa reported over the communicator. "They're starting to predict where we'll appear." "Switch it up," Jack ordered. "Use the lower gravity. Jump higher than they expect. Move to places they think you can't reach." Nicole. Bennett had rigged the remaining noisemakers to remote detonators. "I've got 3 left," she told Jack, using them sparingly. Inside the cave, Daniel Peterson treated the injured coalition personnel while Owen Fletcher monitored their communications. "I'm still broadcasting our location to the fleet," Owen said. "But I'm getting a lot of Kargan chatter too. They sound angry." Lieutenant Ziv, his wing now properly bandaged, joined Jack at the defensive line. "Your tactics are unusual," the Vexillian observed. "The Kargans are elite warriors, but they fight by a strict code. You humans fight like the wilderness itself." Jack nodded. "On Earth we learn to adapt or die. It's in our blood." In the Kargan command ship hovering above the outpost, Commander Drakthor slammed his fist on the console. "How can 20 untrained humans cause so much chaos?" he roared at his officers. "They're cadets, not soldiers." His second-in-command looked nervous. "They don't fight like any species we've encountered. They set traps, they use the terrain. They appear and disappear. Our soldiers report they never tire even after hours of pursuit." "They're just humans," Drakthor growled. "Capture their leaders. The rest will fall into line." Back at the defensive line, Laura Keller spotted movement from her position in a tall tree. "We've got a problem," she reported. "They're bringing in heavier weapons, looks like a pulse cannon." Jack thought quickly. "Nicole, use your last noisemaker to the east. Brandon, Eric, can you rig something bigger? Something that will really grab their attention?" Brandon and Eric looked at each other, then nodded. "We can rig the fuel cells from the dropship," Eric suggested. "It would make a big enough explosion to draw them away." "Do it," Jack ordered. "But be careful." As Brandon and Eric slipped away to set up their diversion, Jack reorganized their defenses. The Kargans were getting closer with each attack, learning the humans' patterns. "We need to hold out just a little longer," Jack encouraged his tired teammates. "The fleet is coming." Stephanie Hill, who had been monitoring the skies, suddenly pointed up. "Look, in the clouds." Through a break in the purple clouds above, they could see flashes of light. The distinctive sound of coalition ship engines roared. "Overhead, they're here," Owen shouted from the cave entrance. "Coalition fleet is engaging the Kargan ships." Hope surged through the exhausted cadets, but on the ground they still faced dozens of Kargan soldiers who now had nothing to lose. "They're going to make one final push," Jack warned everyone. "Get ready." Sure enough, the Kargans began to advance from all sides, no longer bothering with caution. They fired continuously, forcing the humans to stay down. "Brandon, Eric, now would be a good time for that diversion," Jack said urgently into his communicator. "Ready in 3, 2, 1. Brandon replied. A massive explosion rocked the forest to the west. The rigged fuel cells created a fireball that rose above the trees. Many of the Kargans turned toward the explosion, momentarily distracted. "Now," Jack shouted. "Everything we've got." The humans fired in unison, forcing the Kargans to take cover. Nicole triggered her remaining noisemakers. creating chaos and confusion among the Kargan forces. In the sky above, coalition ships were clearly winning against the surprised Kargan fleet. Several Kargan ships were already retreating, while others had been disabled. The Torlian instructor, who had been monitoring coalition communications, suddenly spoke up. "Kargan command ship is hailing all forces. Listen." He held up his communicator so everyone could hear the translation. "All Kargan forces, this is Commander Drakthor. Coalition fleet has broken our orbital defense. Ground forces are to cease engagement and prepare for extraction." A cheer went up from the humans, but Jack held up his hand for quiet. The transmission continued. "We were not informed that humans would be defending Nexus 7. High Command did not authorize engagement with Deathworlders. Repeat, disengage and prepare for extraction." Silence fell over the human cadets as they processed what they had just heard. The Kargans, a feared military force across the galaxy, were retreating because they had encountered humans. "Did they just say what I think they said?" Ryan asked in disbelief. Jack nodded slowly. "They're afraid of us. Not because we beat them, but because of what we are." Laura climbed down from her tree. "They're actually pulling back. I can see them retreating toward their landing ships." Within minutes, coalition ships landed in the clearing near the cave. Armed coalition soldiers poured out, securing the area, but they found no Kargans to fight, only 20 exhausted but triumphant human cadets. Admiral Dren, a tall Arcturian and commander of the coalition fleet, approached Jack. "Cadet Harlow? I received your distress call. We came as quickly as we could." "Thank you, Admiral," Jack replied, standing straight despite his exhaustion. "The Kargans have retreated. We have injured coalition personnel who need medical attention." "Admiral," Dren looked around at the makeshift defenses, the signs of battle, and the tired but proud human cadets. "You held off a Kargan invasion force? With 20 cadets?" Lieutenant Ziv stepped forward. "They did more than hold them off, Admiral. They forced them to retreat. The Kargans didn't want to fight humans once they realized what they were up against." The Admiral shook his head in amazement. "In all my years, I've never seen Kargans retreat from a battle they started." He looked at Jack with new respect. "What exactly did you do to them?" Jack glanced at his fellow cadets, then back at the Admiral. "We showed them what humans are capable of when protecting others. We adapted. We survived." Later, aboard the Coalition flagship, Admiral Dren addressed all 20 cadets. "What you did on Nexus 7 was extraordinary. You were supposed to be on a training mission, but instead, you faced combat against one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy, and you prevailed." He paced in front of the lined-up cadets. "More importantly, you've changed how the Kargan hegemony views the Coalition. They've sent a formal message indicating they wish to discuss terms for a ceasefire. They specifically mentioned the presence of humans as a factor in their strategic reconsideration." Melissa leaned over slightly to whisper to Jack. "Is he saying they're afraid of us?" Jack kept his face straight, but whispered back, "I think he's saying they're afraid of what 20 untrained humans could do. Imagine if we were actually trying," Admiral Dren continued. "The Coalition Council has voted unanimously to fast-track human integration into our defense forces. Your actions have proven that humans bring something unique to the galaxy." He smiled at the cadets. "You came to learn from us, but you've taught the galaxy something instead. Sometimes the most dangerous species can also be the most valuable allies." Jack looked at his fellow cadets, tired, bruised, but standing tall. They had come to Nexus 7 as students but would leave as legends. The Deathworlders had arrived in the galactic community, and nothing would ever be the same again.